Good morning, everyone. So anybody that's been joining these, Dr. Wendy Parent-Johnson, our director of our SNOR Youth Ed, and I've been, and Jeff, facilitating these since early March. This is the next one in the series, and I'm just going to get right to the speakers because they've got some awesome information to share today about virtual employment supports. So we have Marianne Beckman. She is the community facilitator and grant specialist for Transcend Incorporated, and Danita Eason, who is the program coordinator and employment specialist for Transcend as well. We're very blessed to have this national center and the staff come and teach us all the great things that they're doing, and I'm going to let them get started because they've got a lot of information. So if you guys, like Jeff said, if you have questions, put them in the chat box. We're going to try to address them as we can or at the end. So thank you all for being here, and Marianne and Danita.
Well, good morning, everyone, or shall I say good afternoon?
Depending where you are, exactly.
Yeah. California, yeah. So I'm Danita Eason. I'm the program coordinator for Worklink, a Transcend company in San Francisco, California.
Okay, and I'm Marianne Beckman. I'm a latest title, community facilitator. What that means is I just work with a lot of families and adults and individuals with disabilities out in the community for creative employment opportunities, which is the Wisconsin division of Transcend.
Excellent. Next slide.
So our agenda today, you can read read what's on there, but we really just want to look at how can we help families and professionals to best grow and develop and keep developing these employability skills and work in changing times. Next slide. We know we're all in a new reality, and the thing about our new reality is we don't really know. How long is our new reality going to continue? What's it going to merge into? We don't know. Things we have found out, though, is people have more time at home now, more time in front of a computer or a device, different accessing to different programs and supports, and there's just a lot of unknowns. So we're in the midst of that paradigm shift now. Next slide.
All right. So before coronavirus and the pandemic, Worklink prided itself in being a 100% community-based program providing graded services, combining job development, employment placement, discovery, volunteerism, and recreational activities, and classes for skills building and fun, using a person-centered approach.
And for creative employment opportunities, pre-COVID, excuse my spelling, sorry, all services have been in the community, and that's been something for CEO for 30 years now, that we are fully community-based. And our one exception would be we have this little office area where if we need it, we might use that for our skills to pay the bills classes sometimes, but we try to even have those out in the community. Next slide.
So now, as you see, we are in the what now phase. Shelter in place went into effect in mid-March, and we had a short amount of time to reconfigure our entire program. We've had to, unfortunately, furlough our San Francisco staff. We went from an 8-person team to a 3-person skeleton crew, including myself. And we've had to convert our services to a virtual format, relying on Zoom. So.
Yep, and CEO was quite similar. We just in the midst of it all, we had some people that needed to do more with being at home with their kids who were now home and doing their schooling, their education through home. We also needed to do some layoffs due to just so many unknowns to start out with. Next slide. I think what's important, though, is we always can choose, who do I choose to be? And we know historically, throughout time, there's always been these different things going on in the world where change has had to happen. And we've always we've pushed to be that more in that growth zone. not the fear zone, which maybe we shift into that for moments, but we want to keep those moments a little where we get irritated or panic or feel kind of hopeless on what's going on. But then when you really dive into that learning zone of, I need to let go of control. Things are changing, and that's just how it is, and it's always been that way. And looking for opportunities to learn and grow, then you can get into that growth zone where you're really able to look at how can I assist others to keep learning, and how can I use choice and imagination to really appreciate and be grateful and to keep growing and changing with our services and to keep that going for all our clients too. Next slide.
So Worklink was dedicated to continuing services even in this format. So we have a bunch of activities from virtual classes, a social event called Cafe Quarantine, wellness classes at the City College, and virtual tours, as well as employment-related skills. Next slide. So the priorities were to find ways to offer the same experiences with these new limitations. We've had to actually learn how to master Zoom and then find ways to get our folks connected. So we've helped them in obtaining devices. We've had to ask relatives and friends for used computers or laptops, look on Craigslist for things, as well as finding out and telling them about low-cost internet services. We've paid house visits with mask and glove, of course, to help families learn how to set up Zoom and install Zoom. Next slide. And so Worklink, our participants feel most secure when they receive a weekly schedule. Thankfully, we've been able to continue to do this, even though now we're just doing it via email. I send a schedule out every Friday morning. It's exciting for them to see this laid out with all kinds of activities and Zoom links laid out. Next slide. So Cafe Quarantine is something that I kind of threw together. My role with this 3-person crew is more so recreational. So I created Cafe Quarantine, which is the social component. We have 3 different parts of it. We have a mixer called the Meet and Greet every Tuesday, and a young lady named Andrea in our group often show and tells different things about her experiences. We have a dance party every Wednesday and a karaoke open mic on Fridays. What do you have, Marianne?
We don't, I'll get into it in a little while. We have our skills to pay the bills classes and some one-on-one supports going on, so yeah.
Excellent, so next slide. We also have wellness classes. We've actually taken advantage of YouTube and a site called Pop Sugar to find exercise classes, anything from chair-based yoga to dance cardio. A lot of our folks love Bollywood and Zumba. So we get together and we do that twice a week with a certified instructor on a video. And in addition to the dance party, it's just an excuse for people to keep moving even while being at home. Next slide. And we've also partnered with teachers from City College of San Francisco to continue instruction of art, basic computer skills and typing, and drama class. Last semester, the drama class performed a Zoom-based reading of West Side Story, which was pretty awesome. And I think later this year, they're going to do Grease, so that's gonna be pretty cool. Next slide. We take advantage of, we have to be creative actually to make this work. So we use 360 and Google Earth as well as YouTube to travel to different places or learn about various cultures and arts and crafts. We've even taken amusement park rides using YouTube and they love it. Next slide. And then the Money Matters component. So we have an employment specialist who offers classes on basic counting and money management skills, everything from recognizing numbers to budgeting and to reading checks or bank statements. Next. And then we have current events club. So every week, the group gets together with another staff and they talk about important news events. And they love this. They love talking about their opinions on social issues and political issues. Next. And then we have the job clubs. We have a lot going on. Our employment specialist provides job coach support for those who are essential workers, like the young lady in the picture, who her name is Ryan, and she wouldn't take no for an answer when we gave her an option to stay home and be safe. She said, no, I have to work. So we're supporting her in that. For those who have been laid off or furloughed, the employment specialist has the job club. He assists some of our folks with applying for unemployment, communicating with employers, making sure they get their stimulus checks, and offering resume support and that sort of thing as well. Next. So 5 months in, and our participants are a little bit more confident about using Zoom with some assistance from the staff. Some have gone on to host their own virtual Hangouts. One young lady in particular offers her services to a center for sick children as a virtual storyteller. And then we have another gentleman who leads a children's liturgy for his church every Sunday using Zoom. Others have hosted virtual happy hours, dance parties, circle sings, you name it. And it's important for them to be able to stay connected without a staff presence. And that is a huge positive outcome out of this incredible situation. Next. You're on mute, Marianne.
Thank you. Thank you, Danita. I'll go through some of the things that we've been doing through CEO with employment and career training through this whole process. So next slide. We started out right away at the beginning. We took a look at the soft skills piece, knowing that that would be something we could really do virtually. So the link is down there from the whole part on soft skills, and our areas have been communication skills, enthusiasm and positive attitude, teamwork, networking, problem solving, and critical thinking professionalism. So we started up the skills to pay the bills virtual, and our VR system in the area worked really closely and got on board quickly, knowing that we needed some services to get moving and going for so many people at home. So we started in, and they just took off. It's gone really well. Next slide. Jeff, can you click on it again? Then the other picture, the other side of the picture will come. Thank you. I'm just going to show you a couple of sample slides of different activities we've been doing, because we discovered, as we all know, everybody needs to have some movement going to really be engaged, and we didn't want it to just be a sit and get. So we first of all started out by doing one-on-one teaching of, are you comfortable getting onto Zoom? Here's how Zoom works, and just learning from them. And we have across the board, sometimes a parent or another support person sits in, other times they kind of support each other. In one of the groups I did, we actually had a young man who has a degree in IT. So for him, he became our IT specialist, that when someone was struggling, he would say, let's go off into the Zoom room and I can help you through this. So that worked out really well. This is one of our activities we do right in the first session on listening and following directions. And this is what happens. Everybody's paper ends up differently. And we go through the directions orally, and then we have them up visually too. And then it works out really well, because then we'll say, well, wait a second, you all follow directions. Why does everybody's paper look different? And that's where they get into talking about, well, but it depends on how you interpret and what your perspective is. So that then leads us into that whole communication piece on, so often we think we've said something clearly, but it depends on a person's perspective. And that's why you can have many different avenues, and things could look so different, but everybody truly did follow the directions. Next slide. We've used Kahoot!, and I don't know if any of you have ever used it. There is a free version, and it's been fun. It's where you can go in and you put questions in, and then relate it on your topic, and then they can either log in on their phone or on their own device. For those that struggle with figuring out the logistics of that, I just log in and bring it up as a team format. And then everybody is able to chime in on what their answer is. For those who are non-readers, I read each question out loud, and then I'll just say, hey, what do you think? Red, yellow, blue, or green? What's your choice? And it works. So it's just a fun way to get people engaged and to have some fun. Next slide. Another thing we've done during our skills, we try to connect how can we help them to also continue it and to apply it at home, or for the few who are out there into the community. So our one session on your PMA, your positive mental attitude, we have this little dice game that we play where they each have a dice, or we send them a link and they can make their own dice out of paper. And then it's something that they do. You can see what they shake, and they then they respond. Like number 6, something nice I did for someone recently was. And then they share, they talk about it. And our whole group, I will say this is session 2. And by session 2, it's kind of like the old Brady Bunch series. Everybody's little pictures are popping up. And then you see them kind of pointing over at each other and laughing and talking. And they're getting into side conversations online, which has been really neat to see. This game, by the way, we encourage them to then also do with a family member or whoever it is that they're living with, or if they want to do it virtually with somebody else. And we encourage them to do it every day, even for like 5 minutes, just to keep your mind focused on that positive mental attitude that is needed in work. Next slide. This is, we call it the good, the bad, and the reasonable. And it's a teamwork building where I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. You're using marshmallows and pasta. We drop off at everybody's house ahead of time, the pasta and the marshmallows. And I would suggest linguine if anyone wants to try it, because it's thicker and it doesn't break as easily. And it's supposed to be, they're building as a team, but we're doing it virtually, so we don't have that team. So what we have them do, it's during our teamwork session, we have them try building on their own, and then everybody shares on their camera what they've come up with. Then for the application piece, we say, now work with somebody at home to add on to this. And then our next session, they come back and they show us how it has changed and grown. And it really is a good activity. We actually like it this way better, because when they try it on their own, we get a lot of neat ideas. But then they discover, oh, maybe I would like a job where there is some teamwork involved because of all the ideas that come into play and learning to work with others. We have discovered, just like, I don't know about all of you, but it was in my family when I was growing up, siblings don't always treat each other too kindly. And so many of them have talked about how they have to learn to get along with their sibling they've selected to help them in building their structure. So just a fun activity on doing a job alone versus doing it with a team. Next slide. This is a self-reflection that we do, and we do send this out ahead of time to them, where we talk about, it's like looking in a mirror and what do you see? And again, we're trying to get them more and more focused on what skills do they have. So I'm most proud of my ability to blank. One area I would like to improve in is, and some ways I can work to improve this skill is to whatever. They all volunteer to share their responses. And one thing that we do in every session, we start out with kind of like a short little icebreaker, and we're using Michelle Garcia Winner's People Files concept. And what we start out with is with that icebreaker, like it might be something like, if you found $1,000, what would you do with it? And as they share, that's when we find out different interests and values that each of us has. And we start taking a file of that. And then each time we talk about, what are you learning about each other? What do you listen for? Just like you would do at work with your coworkers or with customers, to start to learn more about people and really pay attention to people. So once they would share something like this on their self-reflection, then we'd open it up to the group to say, hey, does anybody else have any idea? So-and-so is kind of struggling. They can't think of something they're proud of. Can anybody think of an ability that you've seen in them that you're proud of them because of that ability? And it really opens them up. And it's kind of strange looking at how we're teaching interpersonal skills virtually, but we're teaching them that awareness, and we're teaching them how to really listen and to interact with each other. For some, it's been really hard. For others, they have loved it, and they have actually felt more comfortable being on virtually like this. We had one young man who he consistently would sometimes say, I'm starting to have a meltdown here. I'm going to log out for 10 minutes. I'll be back on. And that's what he does. So it was the same thing he would do in a group, of just stepping out and coming back in. So next slide. So that was Skills to Pay the Bills classes. And there's a flyer at the end if anybody wants to see, if you wanted to promote something like that. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me, and I can give you some ideas on other things we've done with our Skills to Pay the Bills series. This is something that Transcend has used called Building a Vision Statement, and you can see the link there. And it's a nice way for either an employment specialist, a family member, somebody to work with a young adult on how can you build that vision statement. And it takes you through step by step, and there's a video to watch on it. So that's just for your information. Next slide. Now, besides our building of skills, like our Skills to Pay the Bills classes, we also know that one of the best predictors for employment success are those power of work experiences. So things like informational interviews, job shadows, volunteering, internships, and paid entry-level jobs. So I'm just going to go through some of the things we've been doing with these things and how they've tweaked and adjusted a little bit due to the different time period. Next slide. I'm going to talk us through some examples with a young man I've been working with named Matt. Matt gave me permission, and he, by the way, said if you ever wanted to hear his own words, he would gladly share those too. So that would be Matt. Matt's a young adult, so many interests and so many skills. He exited high school in 2019, and then he enrolled in Project Search. Project Search services, though, ended March of 2020 because of the virus, so he never got to finish it up. So he connected with DVR, with CEO, and we've been going through a discovery process with Matt. So let's take a look at his journey and some of the things that he's been doing during this time period. Next slide. Now, the idea of the discovery process is to really establish that rapport with the individual, to learn from that individual and the supports, and identify what are their dreams, their fears, their interests, and their skills. So often, even in so-called normal times, I don't know if there is such a thing, this stage gets skipped and people try to jump right into a job placement. And we have found over and over again, if you take some time with that discovery part, that's where you get those real win-wins. The win of a placement that makes sense for the individual, and it's a win for the employer too. So we don't want to skip those things. And some of the steps are a positive personal profile, skill building, like with our skills to pay the bills, informational interviews, job shadows, career profile, and temporary paid work experience. Next slide. Now the positive personal profile, what we call the PPP, it's really a way to learn about the individual. And with Matt, we did this virtually. And I was able to do it with Matt virtually, his mom, a former job coach he had from a different company, his VR counselor, some of his former high school teachers, and a teacher who was in Project Search with him too. So in a way, it's kind of the beauty of virtual. It's in a way, it's kind of easier to connect with people right now. So next slide shows you, next slide, something on informational interviewing. And I will get you, we're not gonna watch the little clip. I'll actually get you, this version of the PowerPoint doesn't have Matt's example up, but I will get it to you. I'll send it to you, Susan, so maybe you can post that version that has that. But in that positive personal profile, before we get into this next one, it's really a way to gather so much information. And the beauty of it is it ends, now that we know all of this, let's all brainstorm. What could be some really positive careers or jobs that would make sense for the individual? So it's a nice stepping stone in job development to have ideas from everybody and to have all that information. I can give you a real quick example. Like one young man, all he would ever say is, I want to work in an office. I want to work in an office. Well, once we did the positive personal profile, we learned a strength he had, and something that everybody who has worked with him said is he is so organized. And then he started saying, yeah, you know what? I like to organize. Like I like to take things that need to be mailed different places and make sure they're packaged right and the shipping label's clear and correct. So it's like, oh my gosh, we could be looking at FedEx. We could be looking at Amazon. It really shifts those office skills into something more specific for the young man. So next is at informational interviewing. And Matt was involved in 3 different places. He actually did a face-to-face at a coffee shop outside. He did another one at a hardware store on location. But again, they were outside and they went inside for just a little bit with masks on. And then he did his 3rd one at a golf course, and that one was a one. And with the informational interviewing, first I worked with Matt before the informational interview, come up with questions, because he wanted to learn information on these jobs. I wanted the employer to get to know Matt and to take a look at Matt. Like an important thing for Matt is he's able to stand for about 2 hours and then he needs to sit down for 15 minutes. So one of his questions he came up with was, how much standing is there on this job? Is there an opportunity to sit down? So why don't we go to the next slide? And again, when I get to, I'm sorry, we had sent so many different versions. When I get the latest version up for Susan, you'll be able to see examples of the questions that Matt came up with and some answers that he got.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That was on our end, Jeff, because we had so many we were sending you. With then that informational interview, remember starting with, first he was in skills to pay the bills and learned all these different skills. Then we went into that PPP, professional profile, personal profile. Then we moved into those informational interviews. And now Matt is in the works of getting set up for a temporary paid work experience at the local golf course. And employers now need people to be sanitizing. Guess what? Matt loves to sanitize things. He loves it. So it's a good fit. He also loves golf, and that came out in his PPP. So it puts those pieces together. So he'll be doing that next. Next slide. Right now, here are some examples of things that's going on with job development beyond, beyond that discovery process. This young lady here in the pet shop, she actually was in one of our skills classes first. She had been working in an in-house organization for quite a while, but then wanted to be out in the community. So we were able to do job development with her, starting with online informational interviews at different pet shops. And now she's doing an internship at a pet shop face-to-face with the animals. 30 hours, her 30-hour review was last week, and we're seeing if they want to hire her on, and they most likely do. So now they're trying to figure that out. Another example we have is a young man at a grocery store. He was terminated from his job at a health club because all the health clubs were closed down. And then he joined our skills group, so we got to know him. That's another beauty of those skills to pay the bills classes. You get to know the individuals pretty well. Now we knew grocery stores were open and active. He did a face-to-face informational interview with one of our staff members, and he is now working as a stocker. The store hired him, and that store told us, hey, we'd like to keep hiring, so if you know of anybody else. Another thing we've had is we do find we have to teach social distancing, hand washing, how to wear a mask. Right now I'm working with a young man in the autism spectrum who has an intolerance to wearing a mask. And he isn't being told he has to wear a mask. So we're teaching him the rule: when you work, you have to wear a mask because the employer is requiring it. And the people working with him also want that for safety. So we're building that tolerance in steps, trying different materials on the masks, letting him wear it for short spurts, but not at work. He's not working at this time until that happens. Next slide. Now, some of our clients have been called back to jobs that they've had before. Robert, and here's just some of the things that have happened with that being called back. Robert's been working, he's always taken the city bus. Now our city buses can only have 10 people on the bus. So he ran into ending up getting to work late because he would wait and 2 different buses went by him because they were full. So the job coach worked with him about just getting up 30 minutes earlier, and he now is able to get on a bus right away because he's beating other people that are coming out at that time. And while he was unemployed on furlough, the job coach did help him with how to figure out how to get unemployment. The next person, Chance, he was called back to a skating rink that we have in the area, and he declined. He's just feeling that it's not safe to be out in face-to-face environments right now. The skating rink has graciously said they will hold the job for him because they don't have a lot of people coming there right now anyhow. So we've had that happening. And then here's another example that we've had of where at a school district office, they were closed for a while. The young lady who was working there was furloughed. Then they reopened, but then she lives in a group home and an employee there contracted the virus. So she was not able to work out in the community, and that situation is still going on. So then we had someone, Darcy, from another client from a different job who was laid off from a hotel. She now is filling in at the school district office. And down the road, Darcy will get back to the hotel and the other young woman will get back to the school district office. But for now, we're just doing some shifting of clients and being creative to figure out how can we move things around to meet the needs of the client and the needs of the employers. Next slide. Danita, did you want to take this one?
Okay, so coronavirus has taught us a lot of lessons. I'm sure you all agree. It taught us that technology is key and it needs to be taught. It's really, really essential for it to be taught. It shows us how beneficial collaborating with families can be. and that virtual services do work, and they should continue even if there's a post-pandemic. We are to ask for permission, or for forgiveness, not permission. So we haven't officially been granted the authorization to use a virtual format, but we're doing it anyway, and we're hoping that we get their blessing. And we have to do what's right by any means necessary. That's the theme of this year, it seems.
Yep. Definitely.
Anything to add, Mary? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it really comes back to that. In the midst of change, what do we choose? Just like we do in our positive mental attitude session. It's our choice. We can choose our attitude and what we want to be doing. Next slide.
Is there another slide?
Questions.
Questions. That's the slide.
Yes. Yeah, that's the slide.
And for questions, please feel free to type it into the chat box or to raise your hand. Yeah.
I know, Jeff, were there any questions in there yet? I haven't paid as much attention.
Nope, I didn't get any questions.
Oh, I do see someone brought up that they have a doctor's note to wear a shield, and that is a good point too. With our young man who we're trying to help build some tolerance with the mask, that would be we would also look at, would the shield be something that he would be able to tolerate? So thank you for bringing that up.
Someone's asking about the personal profile. There actually is a form for the positive personal profile.
Yep.
And I guess I think we can show it to you guys at some point.
Yeah, and I'll send to Jeff and Susan the version. We had so many versions, but the version of the PowerPoint that does have an example of one in there. So, yep.
And hopefully you guys are, before we give an opportunity to the state agencies, keep asking questions, but some of what you might have heard, and this is where the paradigm shift is, that no matter what setting individuals are in, we can instill some employment pieces, right? You've heard, I've heard a lot with Marianne and Danita and all this whole series is whether you have people in what Arizona calls day treatment and training, or you happen to have them in center-based or sheltered workshop. Most agencies, I think that's fair to say, either have not opened those back up, or they're trickling in, or they're doing minimal because of the safety and health and those things. And we encourage you to give that employment flair to the extent possible, even in those settings. You have this opportunity, and we are so supported by our voc rehab, Medicaid, and BDD systems, and they're asking us to all be creative and innovative. And we want you guys to know that maybe not everything's possible, but when you have, even though our system is the way it is, if things come up, it's like, maybe I could do this, I'm not sure. You probably just need to ask. And it's very likely that it will get paid for, and it could be something that you are able to do in Arizona. Try to get out of that mindset of the typical traditional, because Krista Mackey's on today, our voc rehab administrator. I don't know if Margaret, there's so many people I haven't seen, if Margaret Corcoran, the employment administrator for DDD, and then we've got Adam Robson, and I'm not sure that he wants to add anything, but our employment administrator from Access or Medicaid program, they're all asking us to be creative across settings. I think we get stuck and think, oh, employment is just in community, which it is, but then we don't need to just focus on employment for individuals who are in, competitive integrated or working with voc rehab. Really think about everyone across who you're working with to integrate this flair of employment, really creative ways, because all of the things the ladies talked about today will build self-confidence, self-determination. We're seeing those things happening in different things that we're doing that are also, those things are necessary to be successful in employment. So I wanted to add that. Oh, go ahead. Were you going to say something, Marianne?
Yeah, I was going to say, just definitely. I mean, I will say that we also, like with one of our young men, we're, he's actually building, and now we're developing into an IT position for him that will be a virtual IT position, which, you know, fits perfectly. It's going to be a great fit for him right now, and it's a great fit for the company too. So, you know, that it has a need for more and more people who can be doing some things virtually. So, yeah, the world's changing. So there's a lot of great things going on.
And positions are being created, and people are working and getting hired. I don't want to be Pollyanna. I understand what's going on. We all know there's a lot of unemployment in Arizona, but we have providers on here who would tell you that they're placing people every day, and they're really getting creative about it. But also, if people are comfortable working in the community, we need to embrace that and go with it, because that's their choice. It does not, it can't be driven by us. It really needs to be, I mean, of course, we've got to listen to what our governor and some of the recommendations coming down and all of that. But in general, we need to be informing and do an informed choice and really helping our individuals, you know, what they want to do, and not holding them back because of our fears, potentially, or our safety and concerns. Now, of course, we have to address all of that too, because I'm not saying you guys are comfortable going out yet, but just thinking a little differently about all the individuals that you're working with across your platforms. I don't know if there's anybody on here, including Wendy, but as providers that wanted to share, we do have some time. I'll also, if there's anything that they might wanted to add to this, you're welcome to do that. We love, you know, that feedback. And because some of you have presented with us in this series and will be in the future, but if you wanted to add anything, please feel free. And then I'll move it to the administrators if they want to add anything, or they could now as well. Don't be shy. Oh, Vanessa Zuber.
Hi there. I just wanted to, I thought it was really cool how you guys spent time training folks on technology, because I do believe, like, we've learned something from doing that as well, where a lot of our members have actually, they've expanded their skill sets by spending time, you know, taking the time to really train them on how to use all this cool virtual platforms and technology. And I think it's been really helpful for them. And also just that people do want to work, and people are, you know, getting jobs, and we're able to provide that support if they need it. And we can do it virtually. We can, you know, provide some in-person supports on the job. And I think it's just that willingness and just going for it, you know, not being afraid. And so I think that's what I just wanted to chime in on. It's so cool to hear what you guys are doing, and it's really awesome. Really awesome how you guys
Thank you. Thank you for adding that, Vanessa. Did anybody want to respond? Or I see that Mr. Steve, I might ask you to go a little deeper in that. I see in the chat box any hearing impaired suggestions. Do you mean like working with that particular population, with people who are deaf and hard of hearing? Is that what your question is? Or you could put it in the chat box and just make sure we're clear. And ladies, if you have, yes, okay. So he's asking if you guys have any suggestions for working with the deaf and hard of hearing population. Or anything different, I guess, because often I'm like, anything that works for one population probably works for all, but there might be some specifics.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of, you know, it's so many need all different accommodations, so you just figure that out.
Yeah, we try our best to accommodate people with different needs. We have a few people who are sight impaired, and they're still able to participate fully with some modifications. But with the hearing impaired, I'm not really sure. That's a good question.
Well, and Jeff, I don't know if you have the ability to jump on right now, but this is minor, but some of the things that we've learned about Zoom, because we've had to use this since early March, you know, about like tagging the interpreter and pinning them so that you can always see the interpreter the whole time on Zoom versus trying to sort through and find them. I don't know if there's any other things, just technology-wise, that you wanted to share, Jeff, because closed captioning, we have this, we also have the ability to work with the Arizona Commission on Deaf and Hard of Hearing, where as long as they know ahead of time, you can employ them and they'll do that for no cost and interpret. These are just the technology pieces, because I really feel the job development piece is probably very similar, just their communication is different. Jeff, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, you covered most of the things, but we also do Spanish translation too.
Yes.
We have a Spanish interpretation for those who request it. And yeah, it's been great to have, you know, those 4 accessibility options to provide through this platform, and it's just making it more, just giving more opportunities for more people to participate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we try our best at the SNOR, and you said, to put things in all kinds of formats, accessible and in Spanish, if we're producing things. Kristen, I think you're here. Hi.
Hi.
There is a question for you. I don't know if you wanted to add anything. It's just asking about if there's any specific programming or resources for the deaf and hard of hearing that you wanted to share in this space.
Yeah, I don't have it like specifically right on hand, but we, I have, you know, staff on board that are subject matter experts. And then we also do quite a bit of, and that staff is also involved on the board of the Commission for Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And I know that they have a lot of resources on their page for individuals that are deaf or hard of hearing as well. So, you know, we try to make sure that we have the video phones to be able to work with individuals using that technology. It is a little bit more difficult at home because you end up having all of these screens and trying to manage all of that. So staff and clients have had some more challenges in that respect, using the video phones and trying to manage all of the screens that are necessary, but working through that. And then Zoom, you know, is really the most accessible platform that we have been able to find at this point. So I'm trying to get our staff to have access to that as well from a Zoom for Government standpoint. And we'll be moving towards that. It's purchased. Now we just got to get it on people's laptops, and never underestimate the number of steps you have to go through in a state program to deploy Zoom licenses. But it will get there. So.
Yes. I will say, for any educators on, I've been involved in some conversations about how they're trying to figure out how they can see the teacher and the interpreter at the same time. I don't think, unless somebody has, and if you do, like, reach out to us, but we know how to pin the interpreter, but we're not sure. These are all the technology things that I'm sure Zoom eventually will come up with that if enough people ask them for it, because now that we're in schools, there's going to be all kinds. But you guys are talking a lot about assistive technology, and I think it's great time to mention Arizona ASTAP, Arizona Technology Access Program, and also the Department of Ed for those that work with young people. But they have, you know, multiple, they have a loan library, and they have so many resources around assistive technology that does level the playing field. We encourage you. Jeff, I don't know if you have time, and if not, I can put it in the chat box, but their web, I think it's just aztap.org, but I'm not certain. They're out of the other you said, out of Institute for Human Development, out of NAU.
They're on
encourage, oh, go ahead.
Oh, they presented earlier, so they're on the landing page as well, if anybody wants that information. When you get done, I had a question for Kristen, so go ahead.
Absolutely. No, that's it.
Okay, so thanks. So Kristen, I'm not sure if you were on before, but when do you have any updates with people, you know, using the technology and services, and particularly the payment mechanisms of how, have you gotten any more information on that? I know it's something that Danita mentioned in the presentation about what they're working on, and I know you've been doing that for quite some time. So do you have any insights for anyone or suggestions?
Other than it's allowable, we are, so I would say vendors in this realm, it is not a do and ask for forgiveness. We are saying from a VR perspective, the services can be provided virtually. We're encouraging that. We want folks to do it to the extent possible. I was interested to see some of the we have a couple services that require, you're on site, you're doing things. And so as long as the provider is comfortable and the client is comfortable and family, we're saying go forth and do that too. That's also acceptable. So go forth and conquer and be as creative as possible. We're trying to support that, and we really have not put any restrictions on in-person versus virtual. Our contracts language is, I think, sufficient to say that both of those can be acceptable. It says face-to-face, and I figure, we're face-to-face here. And you're on the phone with somebody, you're talking with somebody directly. So I'm comfortable with that, and hopefully that word is getting out there and is pervasive. So reiterate that to your peers as vendor connections also.
And we've seen like super creative people doing, I've been part of it. I know our staff has been part of doing informational interviews on Zoom or whatever, WebEx. We've done mock interviewing. We're all trying to be super creative out there. Now, Adam, very quickly, did you want to add anything kind of similar to what Kristen's saying in the aspect of Medicaid dollars? Because that funds our behavioral health and our DDD services. And so really they're the oversight. And so I didn't know if you wanted to kind of piggyback on Kristen or if there's any restrictions or how with the Medicaid dollars.
No restrictions and no updates really with that. We're still allowing for those telehealth services, which means we're allowing for our providers to provide those employment services virtually and bill for those services as well. A couple weeks ago, I reached out to our health plan, really trying to paint a picture of, having all these, these months that have gone by and what kind of creative ideas are going on out there. So really sent out a correspondence to them, asking them to send me, and today is actually the day where everything is due. So if I can close the business today, I should have everyone. But, like what are the barriers around virtual employment services being provided, whether technology, whether it's the understanding of the technology, or not even having the technology, or both. And then also what providers out there are currently doing some creative virtual employment related sessions and services out there. So all of those will be sent to me. I've got about 5 of the 8 right now, but I'm still waiting on 3 by the end of today. So once I kind of compile all that and take a look at that, we're really going to use that almost as a guide as we move forward, through this. What's going to happen after, so if we ever get to a normalcy, but what's going to happen, going forward with all of this. So that's kind of why we did that. So, but other than that, just with the whole Medicaid employment services, no restrictions, just as if the same restrictions as if it was in person.
Thank you. Thank you both. I don't think Margaret's on, or if anyone from BDD Management and I missed you, please jump in.
Susan,
but those are the things that, oh yeah, go ahead.
This is Kristen, please. Just to add, and certainly, vendors, if you want to, from the vendor community, really starting now that we're kind of beyond crisis at this moment, right? For a while, it was like, oh dear God, what are we going to do? And now we're kind of settling in. I am curious to know from a vendor perspective, if you have to purchase new licenses and other equipment and those kinds of things, what is the, has there been an additional cost? Has it been offset by, not having people going out into the community? But, we know we're somewhat limited with our contractual terms and a 5-year, 7-year, sometimes contract term. But as we're starting to look at what are those new rates, what might be considered as a part of a rate structure to help facilitate the ongoing virtual service provision. And in lots of instances, even through this series, we've heard that it's better than, person being on site at the workshop, or at the work site. So if anybody has thoughts on that, feel free to shoot me emails, individually so that we can start to compile that information as well.
And thanks for bringing that up, Kristen, because our next webinar on August 28th, we're asking the provider crew in Arizona that's going to be presenting to sort of address that a little bit, not the funding so much as just how has it impacted your business and what kind of needs and those types of things, because as you can hear, and if I didn't do it justice, Kristen Mackey is the Voc Rehab Rehabilitation Service Administrator for the state of Arizona. So you have her blessing, and also Adam Robson, the Employment Administrator for our Medicaid. Please do not hold back. If you're not getting what you need or you're running into barriers, we want to know so that we can help you get through those. Sometimes local may not hear what we're hearing or be understanding. And so we want you to know that you are being very supported right now. So it's hard when we hear like we can't do anything right now. It's like, oh my gosh, we're trying so desperately to help you guys do this and figure it out, but also to have the administrators at our big agencies to be so supportive is pretty phenomenal. So with 1 minute left, does anyone, I didn't see any more questions come in. Is there anything else? Jeff just put the evaluation in the chat box, the web link for the landing page with, I think this is our 9th, but all the recorded webinars are there. Anything last minute? Wendy, Benita, Marianne, anyone?
Certificates?
I did, Susan and Jeff, I did email the updated PowerPoint. So I just emailed that to you all. People were asking some questions on some things.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there's also an example of a visual resume in there too, that map that we did with Matt. So you can see that too.
Yeah, and we're keeping track of everyone, and we'll be sending out certificates at some point to you all for the hour that you were here. We appreciate it. With no time left, we are so thankful. We hope to see you on the 28th. You all have a beautiful, safe weekend. And thank you so much, Marianne and Danita, for your great information that you shared today.
Thank you for having
You
us.
all,
Yeah,
be
thank
safe.
you. Yep. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.